Good morning. Welcome to B Cube Sunday morning. We got Jim Wright is here. I know David Gerrold is most likely on his way, but him sitting up there in Vermont with that beautiful lake, lovely grandkids, you know.
Yeah, I'd be sitting up.
Yeah, I know, but you live in Florida, where can you say this with a straight face, Jim? Governor gets.
Oh God, please. You had to go there, didn't you? Yeah, Jesus, man. This guy, this guy he's like a case of the herpes. You can't get rid of this guy, man. Every time you think he's gone, he's back, and that's the problem with these people. This is who they are. They're just fucking parasites, man. They never go away. They never go. They talk. People like Gates. They talk about you know government, and they talk about people on the government teat, and they collected a government check. But that's who these people are. I mean, Gates has never had a real job. The guy's never had a real job. His dad worked for the government for the state government for 30 goddamn years. He still does. He doesn't, but he does. And then nobody crosses him. Gates grew up living in a home owned by the state government. He went to school on the government ticket. He got his degree. He was an ambulance chaser for about 20 minutes, and long enough for him to get just enough work experience working for his daddy's friend to qualify for the appearance of running for office. And of course, he ran for office in Florida District 1, where as long as you're anti-abortion and pro-Southern Baptist Church, you can get elected even if you're a head of cabbage. He did that job for what, three election cycles, and then wound up out on his ass, and now he's right back to getting a government job. You can never get rid of these people, man. They never go away. That's who Trump is. He just keeps coming back. You can't get rid of him. Even if we throw him out of office in a couple of years, he's never going to go away. Geez, that's who these people are. Rick Santorum, Ted Cruz. They're addicted, man. They got to be, you can't get rid of them. We need a law that says, look, man, once you lose, you're out of office. You just have to. There's an island at the end of the illusions, all right? And that's where all retired politicians, when you're out of office, we just drop you out of a helicopter on that island. And that's it, man. You learn to forage for food along the shoreline. And if you eat each other, we don't go away. I don't ever want to hear you people. I don't know. There's just something about that mentality where you just can't get rid of these people. And yeah, Governor Gates. That's what we need. Yeah, it's DeSantis hasn't been bad enough. Now we got Governor Gates. Hey, look. Speaking of bad enough, look who it is.
Hello, how are you?
Good, David. How are you?
I am good. I'm glad to see you're up to your usual rant.
Oh, it's just. So what's that? What's that Bruce Banner line? I'm angry. I'm always angry. Yeah, that's me, I guess. So
That
you
was
look
a
like
good
you're
one.
in a.
That's a
Yeah.
great shirt, David.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I found it online. I want to get another one, but I can't find where I bought it originally. I'm going to have to let ChatGPT do a search for me or something.
I bet you've got a whole bunch of flying monkeys out there looking over the internet for that
That's what
shirt.
you want. That's what you need. Now that David said this, he'll have 10,000 people looking for him. They'll have it found in 10 minutes. Perfect.
Hmm.
Uh, so, what's Memorial Day doing for you two folks?
Well, I am at
Had to go there,
Balticon,
didn't you? Where you at?
so I'm at Balticon, and it isn't as well attended as I remember, but We're doing okay. People seem to be having a good time. Two of the elevators aren't working, so there's always so we're having elevator con, and but I'm and we're doing good mostly. How are you doing, Jim?
I'm camped out in my office. I hate this day. I hate Veterans Day and this day, and I don't want to be out in the public. And if I hear one more goddamn "thank you for your service," I swear to God I'm going to belt somebody. And so it's probably better for all of them and me if I just stay in my office and edit pictures.
Well, personally, I find all of the remember the sacrifice to be guilt-inducing messages because to me, Memorial Day has to be another day to just kick back and relax because that's what the whole sacrifice was about.
Well, the thing, well, I mean, the true purpose of a military holiday is a blowout mattress sale at Mattress Warehouse, and I think we all know that. We've forgotten the true meaning of Memorial Day, but yeah, a good deal on cars, that sort of thing. No, it's just sad. It's if you've been if the people out there have been following my threads and I don't know why you would because it's an absolute shit show, but it's the last couple of days. I've got I don't know how many 700-800 messages from replies from just the shittiest people in the world. I mean, I'm looking at one right now. So I'm Carson Johnson, car guy, film guy, and just absolute ass grease dude here. It is. If you were in the Air Force or you were in the National Guard, you're not a real veteran. And if you don't like Donald Trump, you're not real. He's one of those people. And I don't know how many of these replies are generated by Russian hate machines and how many of them are actual people. And that's the funny thing because you literally can no longer tell the difference between a Russian troll
I'm
farm.
smiling about this.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of my friends, who is not quite a Trumper, but he's on his way. But he's a good person other than that, as long as we don't talk politics. And he and my sister, now my sister is very active in Democratic politics and knows Brad Sherman by the first name, right? Congressman Brad Sherman first name, who's a great guy, by the way. And what you want in a congressman, because he has a degree both in economics and in law, right? So he knows. And so I've been watching, there's a thread that they've been going back and forth. And my sister's ripping this poor guy's arguments apart, right? And I'm just enjoying the hell out of it. So, and I'm not, and they don't know that I'm watching. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like over here is I'm focusing on taking care of my kid and his family, and everybody I can. But if I can't make a big change, then I'll make a little change. I'll do what I can. And I think that's really what all of us have to do is do what we can. So,
yeah.
And I mean, we've had a rough week. Elise started working and then we lost one of the dogs.
Right.
We had to put him down because that's heartbreaking always.
Yeah.
And when you introduce a dog into your life, it's like, one day you're going to have to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And so we've been running around trying to get everything accomplished. So, and that because you're with your, you have to carve time for your pictures and you have to carve time for your kids and it adds up.
Yeah. I'm headed out. I'll be on the road most of next month. And so I'll head out I'll be at MISCON and then, and so it's kind of the anchor point that we rotate our summer photography expedition out west, and so I'll be at Arches and I'll be at Glacier and I'll be at I don't know wherever they sell state national park sweatshirts. That's where I'll be. So, but
I haven't been to Yellowstone yet, but I'm hoping to do that later this year.
Yeah,
we're going to be
go a little earlier. This is getting on in the middle of the summer. It's awful crowded. Yellowstone is an amazing place. It's just there's not they need to have they need to widen the roads a little bit or provide more pull-offs. The natural tendency of any tourist as soon as they see buffalo or they see bears. Of course, you're always going to see bears in Yellowstone. Is to pull off, and what happens is the road's not wide enough in a lot of places, and so you wind up with these massive traffic jams of people jammed up in the road, and then everybody's angry at everybody. I'm like, well, that's why people came to the damn park, So widen the road so the cars can pull over. And
you know what? After there is no traffic that can bother me. I got out of LA.
Yeah, you're
like
good.
In LA, you could drive for 3 hours and you're still in LA. Right. So
right.
And if there's traffic up there, bears or bison, I'm fine. It's like, our biggest traffic jam in Vermont is like 3 cars ahead of us at the stoplight.
Right. Everybody's on their way down for maple syrup and pancakes. Yellowstone's a great place. I like it. It's a little bit better when it's not as crowded. But again, it's one of the most popular national parks. It's an amazing place. It's very cool. Usually, the staff is the park rangers and the Park Service folks are massively busy, but they're always really decent and really nice and wonderful and knowledgeable people. And so, if you can get into the back country a little bit there and get off the beaten path, that's always a way to go.
Well, but let me share a story.
My wife and I prefer.
Let me share a story with you about national park. I was in Hawaii with Sean. He was about 11, and we went to the national park that was the Kilauea volcano, and you have to drive.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, and there's a booth. And we pull up to the booth, and I said, "We're here to see the volcano. Do I have to bring my own virgins to throw into the volcano?" And the ranger got it. He says, "No, you have to bring your own virgins." So and then they let us in, and I drive for about a half mile, and suddenly Sean says, "Hey, wait a minute!"
Hang on, just old enough to get it, right? Yeah, yeah. We actually stayed there. There's a military base there for some unfathomable reason, the Kilauea military camp, and we actually stayed up there on top of the mountain, and you're breathing sulfur fumes all night and stuff. But it's really cool to see that volcano. And it was, it's always kind of bubbling down in there, and so at night you can look down and actually see the lava glide. I shot some long exposure pictures when we were there. I have to go back and see if I can find those somewhere. Oh my God, it's 40 years ago now. But
I got to buy a new tripod. I can't hold the camera steady anymore. So, and I can't find any of the tripods I bought before. I bought the expensive ones with the proper head, the expensive head. I can't find any of them.
Yeah.
So. If they're not in the storage locker in LA, when we go clean that out, I'm going to have to buy new tripods.
I don't know. I got. So you've been in my office. There's 20 of them over here against the wall. So I may go shoot some dragonflies this afternoon. It's supposed to store them here.
Yeah, that dragonfly picture you just posted, that was remarkable. That was incredible.
Thanks. Yeah. It's one of else, and I'm tramping on the trail. It was 86 degrees at 6:30 in the morning, and I'm lugging that massive camera, the Z9 and the big lens, and nothing. It's nothing. Not a picture. Nothing. There was nothing. It was too hot for the wildlife, and so I wound up taking pictures of dragonflies instead. And then when I got back to there, I had to hike all the way back around because the place I usually park in the national park was closed, so I had to park outside the gate. So I had an extra mile hump back to where the car was, and by the time I got there, I'd gone through 2 bottles of water, and I was just dying. And I got back to the car, and I was loading stuff in the car, and looked up, and that shot of the mockingbird fighting with the snake, that was 10 feet in front of the car. I mean, I walked 5 miles in the boiling heat, didn't get nothing except a dragonfly picture, and all the action was literally in front of the car, 20 feet in front of the car, off the pavement there. So that's a pretty typical day for me, but.
Yeah,
it's a good way to spend Memorial Day weekend. So, like you said, it's nod your head to the fallen soldiers, and then get out and do something that you enjoy, because that's why they did what they did.
I like to think, and I had 12 members of my dad's generation served in the Army and the Navy, and they all came back, which we're all grateful for. My dad was not allowed to serve because he was an expediter helping get this ship to here on time. I didn't know how important that was. They wouldn't. He wanted to enlist. We wouldn't let him. They said, we need you as an expediter. So,
right.
But
yeah, there were a lot of jobs. There were big military depots on both coasts where they were moving stuff overseas, and transportation in those days wasn't like today. Everything went on ship. I mean, aircraft were barely capable of crossing the oceans, and so guys that could make that stuff happen were damned important.
So, one of the stories this isn't something my dad was involved in, but apparently they wanted to prove something, and they built a Liberty ship in something like 11 hours or something incredible.
Yeah.
And when Hitler heard about it, he said, "We've lost the war. They can build ships faster than we can sink them."
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't know if you talk about this. See, that reminded me of I finally got a chance to watch that Tom Hanks movie Greyhound, which is it's a little thin on character development, but it's got some really great World War II North Atlantic fighting the U-boat scenes in it. So it was a pretty
good picture. They could cut out the stuff with him and his love interest, because that was not important to the movie. Yeah. But it's all right.
Well, in the book, he's divorced and he's bitter about it. He's bitter as hell about it. It's one of the reasons he took the job commanding a destroyer escort across the Atlantic. And so in the book, they kind of put that back in, and it really, again, it was we could spend 10 more minutes fighting Nazi submarines, because there really wasn't a whole lot of character development in it. But it's the battle scenes and the actual life on destroyers in the North Atlantic during that time was very realistically portrayed.
Well, at least in this movie, he didn't get captured by Somali terrorists.
Yeah, that's true.
That was the other one, but, Captain something. I don't remember the name of the movie.
Yeah, Captain. Yeah, it's for God's sake. Now, if you hadn't said it, it'll occur to me 20 minutes after we log off. But yeah, there was that movie was a little less than real. It was a very good movie. There wasn't anything wrong with it, but it was the same thing as like the version of him playing the aircraft command Miracle in the Hudson. There again, that they've made up that whole last section where the FAA is getting shit. The investigation was like, great job, dude, and so that whole thing where they were questioning his credentials and they were questioning the accident and everything else. I mean, all that was bullshit that they made up for drama for the movie, but it was kind of a real disservice to the FAA investigator guys. But again, it's Tom Hanks, so I mean, you can watch Tom Hanks all day, and yeah. I still say Hanks' best role though is the Carly Rae Jepsen video. I still think that's his best role. I don't know how the hell he got talked into that, but it's I think that's his best piece.
I had a chance to meet him once, but it was a big crowd. He was shooting Castaway, and we went to a dinner where they were honoring him and the surviving astronauts for the movie he did about Apollo 13. So it was an Apollo 13 memorial dinner. Well, and he was there, but he had all the long hair and the beard, and he looked emaciated because he had to go back to shoot the rest of Castaway. And so it was a very interesting evening. It's like, who's this bum standing up to the microphone? Oh, it's Tom Hanks. So let's see, who was there in Apollo 13? I don't even remember. Lovell was there, and he and Tom Hanks are old friends now. And and the astronaut who didn't get to go on, there was the astronaut, I forget which one. I spoke to him. He's the one who got sick and got replaced at the last minute, and he was very. I said, you must feel bad about not having the chance to go to the moon and back. He said, oh yeah, it's been one of the great regrets of my life. So,
right.
So I mean, with the high point of your life is going to the moon, and you've trained for it all your life. It's like, man, I'm so jealous of the guys who got to go, but they had to train for years.
Mattingly, Ken Mattingly. That's the guy you're talking to. Yeah, Ken Mattingly. He's the guy that Gary Sinise played him in the movie.
Well, I wouldn't mind having Gary Sinise play me in a movie. I mean,
Yeah, and I've said it for a long time. When they make a movie in my life, I insist that I'm played by Scarlett Johansson because she can play
Yeah.
anybody.
No, and Meryl Streep wants to play
yeah.
you, and she can handle it too.
No, it's got to be Scarlett Johansson. So it's I'm holding
Yeah,
out.
well, I'll tell the producers you're
Yeah.
holding out. So. With my luck, I always get like John Cusack, who.
You were played by John Cusack in the movie.
Yeah.
That's
So,
Notice
how skillfully we have avoided talking politics for at least 20 minutes.
Yeah, Bob. I can see Bob twitching. One of his eyes is twitching because we're sitting here talking about movies instead of.
Oh no, okay, guys. That is, I give you fairness. I occasionally will goad. I mean, you guys weren't here for it, but I asked Jim earlier if he was going to have any trouble saying Governor Getz. You should have watched him twitch. He went over the top. But I will tell you, I talked to people offline about you guys' showing up, and people like.
When you say people, you mean like the FBI or local law enforcement?
I'm more worried about ICE.
You are in the business, Jim. You don't ask, you don't tell. Okay.
Right.
I'm sorry, but no, the people like you guys. You're fun, interesting people. You talk about good stuff. You're genuine, and they don't need to see.
I'm really worried about those people.
Yeah, well, get over it. They don't need to see you spew politics and have a rant to appreciate what's going on with you guys.
Just it's like I said, it's nowadays it's hard. It's hard to separate politics. It's like it used to be as an American growing up until fairly recent, the last 20 years or 30 years or so. A lot of Americans were privileged enough that they could spend all day ignoring politics, and that's one of the things. If you looked at America from that time and the Soviet Union when it existed, everyone in the Soviet Union talked politics. Politics was an integral part of Soviet life because the government was so oppressive and the system was so oppressive. You could not separate politics from everyday life. Literally everything. Using the bathroom, a roll of toilet paper, you had to stand in line for 20 hours. I mean, there's politics there. Shoes, food, work, everything involved politics.
Yeah, and when Khrushchev came to LA in the 50s, he was amazed. He pointed, those cars only have one person in them. And he went to a supermarket and he said, why is there so many different brands of bread? He couldn't understand.
Because Americans were so privileged up until fairly recently that we could ignore politics unless when I say Americans now, of course, I'm talking I use the word privilege because if you were of the privileged class in America, you were white middle class, you had the privilege of ignoring politics. Now, of course, there were a hell of a lot of people in this country that didn't fit into that class that were oppressed people for whichever reason, whether it was race or gender or identity or ethnic background, those sorts of things that didn't have the luxury of ignoring politics every day. But the thing is now, today, America has declined, or whatever the hell word you want to use, where it is nearly impossible for anybody in America, with the exception of the very rich, to ignore politics. And politics is every dinner conversation, just like it was in the Soviet Union. It is every meal. It is every moment. You can't use the goddamn bathroom, a public restroom in the United States of America, without thinking about politics.
Well, yeah, and
you can't go take a piss.
If you don't fit the gender roles, some idiot is going to you're in the wrong bathroom, and women
that's exactly my point. We literally have
been accosted.
We have literally turned taking a piss in a public restroom into a political battle zone. And again, we are where the Soviet Union was throughout its entire existence, where were oppressive countries. The examples are numerous throughout history where those people, no matter where you fit into that society, no one in this country, except for the very wealthy today, have the luxury of ignoring politics. It's in every aspect. We go to bed at night thinking about it, and we get up in the morning and think about it over cornflakes or oatmeal or whatever the hell it is, or your dye, your Fruit Loops without the dye in them, or additives, or whatever the fuck brainworm guy came up with today. And you know, and so for us to spend 20 minutes of this podcast talking about Tom Hanks movies is a luxury.
And it was
You know,
a good movie.
Yeah, it is.
And besides that,
but it's
do you want to talk about?
But again, it's.
Oh, do you want to talk about the $535 billion that are taken out of Medicare? No.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Everybody's tuned in now, and like I said, you mentioned this stuff, and people have been social media hollering about it all day, you know. And so, but the worst part about it is that you can't separate it anymore. A perfect example is I've recently had to stop posting photography to Threads, one of the platforms that I'm active on, because people just can't separate politics from artwork anymore. And I'm not saying artwork's always been very political or can be very political, but people can't just enjoy a picture of a bird without bringing politics into it. And it's funny because I'll have 10,000 comments saying, "I'm so goddamn sick of Donald Trump. God, Trump's in everything." And I'm like, "Well, here's a picture of a bird I took today." And the first thing they say, the very first comment is, "It reminds me of Donald Trump." I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. And then once one person says it, the next 500 comments are the same thing. I posted a picture of a swan, and unfortunately that swan happened to be a trumpeter swan.
Oh, no.
And I never even made the association. But the first 500 comments were liberals all screaming bloody murder about, "Oh my God, why does it have to be a Trump swan, for fuck's sake?" You know, and it's not just that. It's, you know, it's to the point where posting a picture, I know that dragonfly, if I post that to Threads, I know that at least half the comments will be off-topic bullshit comments about whatever anxiety people are suffering from. And again, I can't fault people for this, because we are all living with we're all in this abusive relationship.
Anxiety is the new national.
Right.
Anxiety is the new national
Right.
context.
I mean, we're in an abusive relationship with our president and half of the country. And so I can't fault people for having that anxiety, but it causes me anxiety. All right. And it makes me.
Let me give you a more immediate thing. We lived in LA, and it was a great house to raise a kid in, but the neighborhood changed, and they were putting up apartment buildings everywhere. Traffic became impossible. We started getting the homeless. We got tweakers. We got and the house was too small. And it got to the point that Sean was waking up every day with a 2-hour rant about how unhappy he was, whatever was going on that was annoying him. Yeah, like you, only right. Only Sean had to say things 3 or 4 times, right? And so I would get in the habit of whatever errands I had to run, I would do them early in the day, so I didn't have to listen to the whole rant. He'd save it up for me. I'd come home, and because we're close to the college, there was no parking places left on our own street, which, you know, it's like, God damn it, there's 2, 3, 4, 12 big lots for you to fucking park in. Don't park in front of my house, right? And so the stress living there was building up, and every day was stressful just getting through the day. And we'd sit out in the backyard in the evening, and you know, we'd either have a beer or we'd toke up a little bit. But you know, here in Vermont, well, I'm not in Vermont right now, I'm in Baltimore, but once we got to Vermont, I actually started to miss the morning rant.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like I said, that's for me. I literally had to stop posting photography, at least for the moment, because it was increasing my stress level.
Yes.
And I'm already angry all the time. And so I reached the point where it's causing me stress, and I got to go outside and pet the dog and play with the grandkid. Except it's 100 million degrees here because it's the Panhandle of Florida, and now it's summer, and this is one of the most miserable places in the world. So I throw the ball a couple of times, and the dog looks at me like, "It's too hot, man. I'm not doing it."
But at least you have a dog that saves the ball once in a while. I throw the ball, the dog says,
I
"Hey,
can't hear
nice
you. You
throw."
broke up.
So I got Charlie, who is not here in the room with me, but Charlie's here at Baltimore with us. So,
oh, really?
And he's having a great time because everybody wants to pet him, and he's getting extra treats for being, So, but we lost the other one, the pit bull.
Right.
And
we lost the beagle last year, so there wasn't. In fact, somebody asked about this.
Tough.
Yeah. Somebody asked about the beagle this morning. He went up with cancer. He went up with brain cancer, very aggressive. We spent a lot of money trying to save him, but there are actually cancer clinics for dogs, and they cost what it costs for people, except there's no insurance. And so we spent a lot of money trying to save him, but in the end, there wasn't any way.
We had the conversation, Sean and I had the conversation of we could take Walker to the vet and spend thousands and thousands of dollars for 6 months of torture, of putting the dog through all kinds of stuff. And we said, let him go peacefully.
Dogs are not people. They don't understand why they're in pain or why they're disabled or why they can't do the things that they could do, or that sort of thing. And you have to reach a point where you have to ask yourself whether you're prolonging the animal's life for yourself or for the dog. And so that's where we were at, and it's very painful. I mean,
it is difficult.
I'm tired of outliving pets. I really am. It's just
it
kills me every time. Every time
you bring a dog into your life, it is inevitable. That dog is gonna. You've got 10, maybe 15 years, and one day it's like you got to let him go.
Yeah.
And it is. I'll give you an example. Harlan Ellison had this wonderful little dog named Abu, and Abu was incredibly well trained. He was Harlan's best friend, even when Harlan didn't have any friends. And after Abu died, and Harlan was broken up for a long time, I had this dog named Dog, and we had a litter of puppies. And one of the puppies, it looked so much like Dog, I named him Rerun. Harlan came over for a party one time. I put Rerun in his lap. He was only about 6 weeks old. Harlan petted him for a bit and then handed him back and said, thanks, but no thanks. Harlan would never have another dog after Abu because he didn't want to go through the pain of losing a pet again.
Right, yeah.
And me, I never wanted to be without a dog.
Right. Yeah,
so we've always been part of my life.
We've always had a dog.
This one?
Multiple dogs, and so the other one, the herding dog's over here somewhere in a heap on the other side of the wall here in the office. So I can hear her over there breathing. So now we're talking about dogs. So she'll be over here any minute now, looking for something. But yeah, it's like I said, it's a luxury to be able to sit and not worry about politics for 20 minutes. I mean, we don't get a break. I mean, even when this guy goes golfing on the weekends, it's some catastrophe with this asshole. And I mean, every single day, Americans wake up, and it's just you get up in the morning and however it is that you interface with the world, whether it's social media, the news, or social interaction, or going to your job, it's just the entire country just waits every morning.
Yeah, I wake up every morning
and I say, is it going to be today? What is this guy going to fuck up today?
I don't. The next time I would check the news will be when everybody's posting he's dead, and then I'll check the news just to make sure.
Right, but it's not going to end. The problem is it's not going to end when he's dead. That's the problem. Is the fact that
it's his enablers. He's already. Let me say this: he's already in such cognitive decline. He's being moved around and put in front of the cameras and blah, blah, simply so that the people behind him can continue to do the damage they intend to do.
Well, that's always who Trump was. Trump, I mean, even when he wasn't in, let's be charitable and say when he wasn't in cognitive decline, because this guy wasn't always cognitive in Trump, or but even when this guy was in his so-called prime, he he's so disconnected from reality. People like this, I mean, Trump has never existed in the reality that the rest of us exist in. This is like Elon Musk. I mean, you watch an interview with Elon Musk, and this guy is increasingly
weird.
This guy, yeah, I mean, Elon Musk. This guy is 5 minutes from being found in a dark movie theater, surrounded by jars of his own piss with 8-inch fingernails. Okay, and the thing about it is, you watch an interview with this clown, and he's not human. He's never, and why would he be? Because the guy has never. He's never gone through the things that shape human beings. He's a fucking alien, man, and he talks like an alien. He talks like a guy that doesn't understand. And this doesn't have anything whatsoever. He claims to be on the spectrum, and he claims to be Asperger's or whatever. And I don't even know that that's true. He's never been tested for it. I think that it's more the fact that he has always been this privileged asshole who's isolated from the rest of humanity. Listen, man, you raise a kid in a dark sack, they're not going to turn out normal. And that's who Elon Musk is. And Trump is the same way. It's what did they call it? Affluence or whatever bullshit excuse it was when that kid murdered people, got drunk and murdered people.
Well, let me say this. I noticed this many years ago. This happens, when you're living in Hollywood and working in the industry. You meet some people who have a lot of wealth, and some people who are just scrambling along, trying to make it from one day to the next. And I noticed that people who had enough money, generally millionaires or above, didn't have the same relationship with the real world. They'd never washed a dish themselves. They'd never had to mow their own lawn. They'd never had to make their own dinner. And so they became, it was like everybody else was a servant or another millionaire. And there was this massive disconnect of what to be a real human being is that the thing that Heinlein said, you have to have a lot of skills. You have to be able to wash a dish, diaper a baby, change a tire, perform brain surgery, all those different things. Right. You have to, and people who have enough money to hire other people to do that for them get a distorted view of how the world works. And so it's the Marie Antoinette thing of, well, let them eat cake.
You're 100% correct. I mean,
there's no bread. Let
every time Trump gives his speech,
no understanding.
Right. Right. Every time Trump gives a speech, he talks about how the price of groceries are down. I'm like, and then he says weird shit like groceries. That's a funny old-fashioned word. The fuck are you talking about? What's groceries? I mean, what the hell are you talking about, man? But this is a guy who's never bought groceries. This guy's a guy that's never been in a grocery store. That's not a photo op. Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, David. Sorry, you're kind of stuck there. You're a little pixelated and broken up.
Yeah, I'm checking my connection right now.
These are
hey,
people.
Jim, Dave's checking his feed. Let me ask you a question. And I don't mean to get you on a rant, so take a deep breath.
It's going to happen no matter what you say, so go ahead.
South African preferred immigration.
Well, again, this is that I look at and I laugh. Like, I'm not going to rant about South African. It's not South African immigration. It's white apartheid South African immigration. Okay, white nationalist immigration. So, we're not actually inviting every South African, are we?
Only the white ones, Only the right sort of people. Yeah, which is code phrase for, yeah.
Right, exactly. And the thing about it is that I can't get angry about that. I mean, I am at the same level I'm angry about everything else, but I can't get angry specifically about that because are you surprised? I mean, Trump is a fucking racist. I don't care. You can make whatever excuse you want, and you guys won't, but America make whatever excuse and rationalization for this asshole you want. But he's a fucking racist. This is the fundamental foundation. This is the plank that MAGA is built on. Racism. Donald Trump exists as a politician. MAGA exists as a political movement for one reason and one reason only. Because America had the audacity to elect a black man president for 8 goddamn years. And that's what the Tea Party, all of this shit is an outgrowth of that bullshit, of that fucking ingrained racism in America. And I don't care how you slice it. If Barack Obama had never been president, Donald Trump would just be another shitty millionaire from Manhattan, okay? But because America had the audacity to elect a black man, that's what gave the Tea Party the impetus
and they showed us
become the MAGA movement to elect this asshole to president.
They showed us twice over. You're not going to elect a woman. We had a black president. Blah 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 blah. blah. I'm crazy. You're not going to elect a woman.
Right. Now it's our turn. It's our turn now.
It's our turn now. Yeah.
It's finally, it's white nationalist men's time. You know, like okay, because we've never had that.
The South has finally won.
You know, but it's our time now.
It took them over 100 years, but the South has finally won the Civil War.
Well, you know, and again, and I live, you know where I live, because you've been here, and I'm
surprised they haven't surrounded you with torches and pitchforks yet.
I was in line, and I was telling a friend of mine about this the other day. I was in line. I made, everywhere I go, I buy shirts, and when we travel in the summer and I go on photography expeditions, I buy shirts because that's what I do. And so I was in the store the other day, the grocery store, and I was wearing a shirt from a barbecue joint in Page, Arizona, and a place called Big John, Big John's barbecue, and it's Page, Arizona, which is one of the most god awful, hot, and terrible places I've ever been. It's beautiful. Page is beautiful. If you want to take pictures of California condors or explore slot canyons on Navajo land, Page is the place to go. But it is, oh my God. And my wife and I were driving through town after we actually had been out all day. I actually had been all the way up in the Vermilion Cliffs, 105 degrees, taking pictures of California condors. Cameras were so hot I couldn't even hang on to them. And we came back and we were starving, and there's a right in the middle of town, Big John's Barbecue. Smell it, and it's like the last barbecue, and it's 105 degrees, and half the people are sitting there. The locals sit outside, and I thought we'd try it, and I'm like, I don't know what kind of barbecue we're gonna find in Page, Arizona, and it was great. It was fabulous, and I despise going to restaurants where you eat on paper plates with plastic silverware. And I thought, God, here we go, and we went up inside. It was actually big barbecue. It's just outstanding, excellent. And so I bought a shirt, and this shirt says Big John's Barbecue, Page, Arizona, but the back of it says, if you smoke it, they will come, right? To play on the Kevin Costner line. Right. So I'm standing out now, fast forward, a year, and I'm standing in line at a Publix in the Panhandle of Florida wearing that shirt. And the guy behind me says, "Oh, do you work for ICE? Do you work for the Border Patrol?" And I'm like, "What? I'm just buying bananas, man. What do you want?" And the guy said, "Well, your shirt." And I looked down, I'm like, I'm wearing Big John's Barbecue. How the hell do you get fucking Customs and Border Patrol? And the guy says, "Well, the back. If you smoke them, they will come." I'm like, "You're talking about smoking them immigrants, aren't you?" And I'm like, "The fuck are you talking about?" And the guy's like, "Well, I saw Arizona, and then I just thought like you were talking about like smoking those illegals as they're coming across the border." I'm like, "The fuck is wrong with you? Were you dropped on your head?" But again, we're surrounded. And I said to this guy, "Listen, you need to not talk to me, okay? You need to shut up, stand still, and don't say another word, okay? I'm going to buy my bananas, and then I'm going to leave. And I don't want to hear a single peep out of you until I'm out the door. Don't say it." And the guy kind of looked at me like, "What do you mean? This guy's literally talking about like killing people, and then, fuck are you? The hell's wrong with you? Normal people don't talk like that. What's wrong with your brain?" You know, it's full of spiders and
Hey,
what?
let me give you this. The next time you go through New Mexico, next time you, I think it's I-40, and you go through Gallup, go to Earl's. It's
Yeah.
a
Oh yeah.
great restaurant. It's called Earl's, and it is owned and run by the Navajos in the area, and they have
Yeah.
authentic food. It is just great, and just order the authentic, huevos rancheros or whatever, and you will not be unhappy.
I told my wife this time because my wife plans all these trips and she's a genius at doing this. I mean, if I did it, God knows where the hell we'd wind up. My wife plans all this. She knows what I take pictures of, and she's the businessman. You met my wife; she's like a force of nature, and so she plans all this out. And
See, I would plan
I
my
told her this
trips
year,
by
I
the
don't care what.
restaurants I knew along I-40, right?
So I told my wife, I said, I don't care what we do this year as long as we swing through the Cameron Trading Post outside of Monument Valley, which is the best Navajo tacos I've ever had in my entire life. And you walk in this place and it's a tourist trap. I mean, it's acres of rubber tomahawks and glass ashtrays. And all the way in the back is this dining room that the wood paneling is, they got it from some saloon that was in the 1870s or something, and and it's just stunning that there's this magnificent dining room in the back, and it's run by the Navajo, and those are the best. I mean, I can't drive past a trailer that says tacos on it without stopping. And of course, out west, it's all a Navajo land. It's all Navajo tacos. It's tacos made with fried Navajo, and they're always this the most wonderful, decent human beings on the planet. But those tacos at Cameron Trading Post, man, those are. Whew, listen, I dream. I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes dreaming about those. so, so we're
Yeah,
driving. We're going to
was
drive
was
2,000 miles.
from
We're going to drive
it would be
2,000
worth
miles so
it.
I can have tacos in Cameron. That's right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you want to, but if you do get through Gallup, stop at Earl's. Some
yeah,
of the other
Earl.
places,
Yeah, we've been
and
there.
do not go to Denny's. Go to Earl's.
Yeah. Yeah, I did it last year. We didn't have time. I mean, we were coming back and passing through Winslow, Arizona. So I always got to stop as soon as we stop at a stoplight, jump out and stand in the corner, take a picture of my wife driving up it was a Hyundai though instead of a flatbed Ford. So, but we listened to Eagles all the way down Route 66. So I feel like I accomplished something.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I don't, I don't, we're kind of scattered, but like I said, it's, nowadays it's difficult to, we're in an abusive relationship. We are. I think half of America is suffering from PTSD, and I don't mean that in a, I don't mean to be a jerk saying that. I honestly think that it's going to be a long time before we're over this, if we ever are. It's going to. I don't know at this point. I was sitting there before the podcast here. I was sitting here reading about farmers in the Midwest who voted for Trump because they are single issue voters. Abortion is what matters to them, and their version of Christianity, and they couldn't vote for the black lady with the funny laugh and the liberal background, and they voted for Donald Trump, thinking that he was a Christian,
Well,
and that
they're finding out.
he
Fuck going
promised.
and find out is
I
a
and
national pastime now.
right, and that they were convinced. They interviewed this guy, and he said Donald Trump told us that China would pay the tariffs, and now I'm being charged fees for my cattle feed, and and we're paying tariffs on the things that we need to continue on, and we're gonna wind up going to go bankrupt in 2 or 3 months if this continues, and we feel like
Well,
we
I
were betrayed, and
suspect,
I don't know what the hell to say to people like
if
this.
the red states get unhappy enough, and it could be before the end of the summer, they get unhappy enough, they will tell their congressman vote for impeachment, and it could happen. It's just a
Yeah,
question of what's the spark going to be that sets off the fire.
yeah, and I don't know. Like I said, on one hand, these people I look at and say, well, you lose your goddamn farm. I don't know what the hell to tell you. you were warned, you knew better, but your hate and your xenophobia were stronger than your goddamn logic. And you can't be stupid to be a farmer nowadays. Farming requires farming. Most of the farmers, I grew up in farming countries. Most of the farmers I know have advanced degrees. They're smart people. You have to be. You have to be to make a living as a farmer in the world nowadays. This is not some guy that went out west with a Model T and a wagon load of shit and put a plow in the ground behind a mule. These are, I mean, even small family farms require a tremendous amount of knowledge.
It's a lot of
Fairly
work.
specialized, but
I have a friend in California.
you can't be
They had
stupid.
their own farm, and it's dawn to dusk, taking care of the animals and everything else.
Yeah. And again, you can't be stupid, but it's like anything else. You can be blinded by your beliefs, by doctrine, by your prejudice, by your hate, by the things that you think you hate. And you've heard me say this many times here. There are people here in town that are absolutely convinced that trans people are out to get them, and they've never seen a trans person in their entire life. There are like this guy standing behind me in fucking Publix. He's worried about illegal immigrants, so much so that he thinks it's hilarious. The idea of smoking people in the desert is funny. Like we're gonna get T-shirts and wear them around because that's a thing that some kind of civilized society would do, right? And 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 you had it's that I don't know how you fix that. And
Well, the first thing
I
you
guess for
do, and
me
I'm
that's
going to say
that's
this
part of
metaphorically, is the first thing is you find the headquarters of Fox News and you blow the building up. I say that metaphorically. I'm not advocating violence, but Fox News is the propaganda outlet that the oligarchs have used for 20 years to shift the American conversation from one of semi-rationality to one of total craziness. So, and it started when Ronald Reagan let Rupert Murdoch into the country.
right. Well, and like I said, I mean, you have that, and nowadays, of course, you have the relentless pressure of social media. And I can tell you that, I mean, my background, for those of you who don't know, I'm a retired intelligence officer. My specialty for much of my military career was an esoteric branch of intelligence called information warfare. And I can see it. I can see it on platforms like Threads, where I think at least a third of the response are auto responses that are obviously AI driven. They're programmed to spew the most vile of hate, and they are designed to divide society. And I can see this because I can post things and I will see 90% because of what I write. Of course, 90% of what I see is these accounts posing as MAGA or conservatives, but I can also write other things, and I can see those same type of accounts posing as liberals, and so it's obvious that there are forces behind this who are, whether they are foreign actors, they're foreign governments, foreign intelligence agencies that are seeking to divide American society, or whether they're just shitty little fucking spoiled children in a basement somewhere doing the same thing. The tools and technology that exist nowadays give that shitty spoiled teenager those Charlie Kirks the same ability, the same information warfare tools that entire intelligence services have. And that's the nature of the society that we live in. And so the problem with that is that it leads the average person to the point where they do not trust anything. They don't trust the words of any politician, theirs or the other side. They don't trust any news service or information service. And while all people, the fundamental, the fundamental foundation of critical thinking is that level of critical thought and doubt that forces you to evaluate, continuously evaluate for reality. what happens is we go so far where a significant fraction of our society simply doesn't believe anything. Right? They don't believe the sincerity of their own. Yeah.
That's something that the whole point of propaganda is not to convince you that they're right as much as it is to get you to distrust
Right.
everything so that you don't know what's right
And you
anymore.
see that, and you see the effects of that
And
in
so,
the most recent election.
yeah, when then people say both sides are equally
There you go.
bad, it's like, oh yeah, the propaganda has worked on you.
Or the ones that don't show up. And when I say something about that online, they come and yell at me and they say, "Well, democracy doesn't work anyway." Well, it sure as hell doesn't work if you don't vote. That's a fact. But that was the point, is to tear down those structures. And the question you have to ask is who benefits from this, and who benefits from this are people who benefit from
And the
chaos
one
and
that really
disorder,
drives
and
me
who
crazy is, I'm not going to vote for the lesser of two evils. No, we're not. It's not the lesser of two evils. It's which one gets you closer to where you want to go.
right.
It's like,
That's what Bob and I were talking about before the podcast started, before you came online, was that again, you wind up with people that are, there's a significant fraction of our side, let's say that, I'm not on anybody's side, but let's say it's our side, who are convinced that if they don't get everything they want every time, then there's no point in voting at all or showing up. Why bother? Democracy doesn't work.
Yeah, I have posted that rant a number of times. You're not getting a fucking pony.
Right.
Stop it. You're getting, at best you can get a
Right.
plow horse.
And that's it.
And at least the plow horse can do
Right.
something.
And that's what we just had, was a
So,
plow horse.
I'm not getting a pony. I'm not voting.
But again,
I'm going to vote for a third party to show you that so I went right. And so when has a third party ever gotten more than one delegate or more than one electoral vote? That was Ross Perot.
right. Well, and the problem with this is, and again, I constantly have my feeds and God knows I haven't looked at email this morning, so God knows what the hell shit sandwich that is. But I have people that constantly write me and ask about these sorts of things and say, well, you can't trust anything. You can't trust this party. You can't trust that party. You can't trust this politician, that politician. You can't trust democracy. You can't trust. I mean, this is something I mentioned to Bob, is I periodically poke the bear by asking people in my feed, how's that protest vote working out for you? And that immediately results in 10,000 very angry responses of "fuck you," I didn't vote because genocide or lesser of evils, or the system's broken, or the voting machines are rigged, or yada yada yada. And this is what I've explained the last two times. I don't care why you didn't vote, only that you didn't vote. And in the same breath, these same people will come back to me and say, well, the reason that Harris lost is because the machines are rigged. Elon Musk rigged the machines. I'm like, well, wait a minute. You just told me you didn't vote, and now you're telling me that the reason that your side had 6 million less voters is because Elon Musk diddled the machines in 50 different states and 50 different systems without being detected in any of those. And yet at the same time, you're telling me you didn't vote. How do you not see it? You didn't show 6 million people that voted for Biden didn't vote for Harris. Now, look, maybe, and I'm not saying he did, but maybe Elon Musk snuck into a voting station in Hoboken, New Jersey, and diddled the machine. But I haven't seen any proof of it. And I noticed the people that are making that accusation, just like the people who were the MAGA voters in 2020, were unable to provide any proof. But again, for me, it's a hell of a lot easier to believe that all of these people who say they didn't vote. Again, this is the.
I had this conversation 50 years ago with, or maybe 55 years ago, with this very, very noble woman. Oh, we don't vote. My family, we don't vote. We don't do that kind of thing. Great, then you don't get to complain.
Right. Well, yeah, I wish that. I wish that was true. I wish that, like there was like some kind of law or regulation. Didn't vote, you don't get to complain. That you get a ticket. But But again, again, on one hand, it pisses me off. On the other hand, if I look at it objectively, I get it. And I get the fact that a tremendous amount of our country doesn't believe in democracy anymore. They don't believe in our
No,
system. And
not
that was,
anymore. Never
and so
did.
the question you have to ask is who benefits from that? Who benefits from the fact that 50% of Americans don't believe in democracy? And
Project 2025 has spent 25 years convincing
right.
Americans that democracy
And,
doesn't
and the
work.
people,
But that goes all the way that goes all the way back to the 50s when the John Birch Society was saying
right.
democracy doesn't work. And I met a couple John Birchers who were very firm in their conviction democracy doesn't work. What we need is a strong ruler. Yeah, like Hitler. You want Hitler? And then they left me alone.
But the thing
So,
is,
but
but
yeah,
that's 30
that is
years ago. But now, if you ask these
right.
people, you want a leader like Hitler? The answer is yes. He built the highways, and oh shit, we just lost David. Where the hell did he go? And um, the answer is yes. We want an authoritarian. We want a guy. We don't believe in democracy. We think that democratic government is too clunky and inefficient, and we want a guy that's going to go in there and chop out all the dead wood, the things that we think don't work, and who's going to make decisions with a pen. And that's exactly what's going on right now. And I said the other day online, and that Republicans have done nothing lately. I see the bullshit narrative about Biden's decline, and now Trump is we're going to find out what state Biden was in. In fact, this is a Matt Gaetz thing, was what state Biden was in, because if in executive orders with the auto pen and he wasn't all there, then none of those executive orders are valid. Well, none of them are valid anyway because he's not the president anymore. But here's the thing: Trump is a fucking auto pen. All right, that guy has no idea what he signed. He just signed 20 executive orders yesterday, and when he was done, he turned around to the guy handing them to him and said, "What I just signed? Is that all of them?" This guy doesn't even know what he's signing because he's not the guy that any of this stuff. And so, but again, here we are where Americans don't trust their government. They don't trust the people that they've elected or haven't elected. They don't trust the electoral system, which means that the guy that's in office, they don't trust that the guys there legitimately, whether it's left or right. And the people that benefit from that are, first of all, our enemies, because I don't give a shit how powerful your military is. If the people that are commanding it are in the state that our government currently is, then the most powerful tools in the world will always be running at a massive level of inefficiency. And so there's that. But the other people that benefit from this are the very people that have always benefited from America: the rich and the privileged and the wealthy. The folks right now that are busy telling you your groceries don't cost anymore, your gas prices are down, everything's fine. And then
Yeah, I went to the store. I go to the store with Elise every Thursday. Now she's working regularly. I went and did the shopping with Malcolm, who's my buddy. We went and we did the shopping. I had Elise's list, and I know what groceries cost. They didn't. The price did not go down.
right. Yeah, they have it. And like the other day, I said 2 weeks ago, the primary shit show that happened on my timeline was the fact that I'd gone to the store. I'm trying to eat healthy, and I've reached the age where every time I visit the doctor, he talks about my A1C, and God damn it all to hell. And and so I'm eating healthy, and so I eat a lot of fruit, I eat a lot of vegetables, and I went in. I want some grapes. Available were something called cotton candy grapes, and they are grown in America. They come, and then, of course, there aren't any grapes available that are grown in America right now because grapes won't ripen for another month or so, even in the San Joaquin Valley. And so, if you're buying grapes in a grocery store right now, the odds are pretty high that they're coming from Argentina
You pay a
or
lot more.
Brazil or from Mexico. And these grapes were a product of Mexico. And they were $6 a pound or $5.99 a pound. Now, that's pretty high because they were special grapes and cotton candy grapes or some shit. But they were the only ones that they had. They were only seedless grapes that they had. And so they're $6 a pound. Well, 2 pounds of grapes cost what a steak does, $12 for freaking
Yeah.
steak. You know, and I said that online, and of course the immediate response was literally 1,200 responses saying, "Oh, you're full of shit, you're lying." I'm like, here's a picture of it. And they said, "Well, where I'm from, grapes don't cost that much." It's astounding at that point that they don't hear their voice, which is, I live in the Panhandle of Florida. And somebody said to me, "You should buy local produce." Really? I should buy local produce? Like they grow fucking bananas in the Panhandle of Florida, right? Look, it's it's astounding how ignorant Americans are of their food supply. I live in a place where the two primary crops are cotton and peanuts because the soil is just
And bigotry. Don't forget, there's a lot of bigotry being
oh, yeah,
grown in
that's
Florida.
correct. You're right. And because those are the things.
All right, listen, I'm going to sign off because I got to get back to the convention. Jim, I love you so much. Bob, you too.
Bye.
Please don't burn down the country till I get back so I can hold the torch.
Hey,
Right.
and
See you
on
later.
food supply issues.
Say hi to,
Bye.
say hi to the folks at the convention. See you, man.
I love you both. Take care of yourselves.
We will. I just wanted to add on some on the food supply thing. I did something this year that I had been meaning to do for years. I went out and got me 10 raised bed gardens, beds, and I put them out in my backyard, covering up some of my incredible grass. And you know what? I haven't had to buy a salad making in 3 weeks. I get to eat out of my garden, and it is just
we try.
amazing.
My wife and I have greenhouses, but where I live, growing things like lettuce is problematic. Salad stuff. If you could grow it here, it would be grown here. There are certain crops that are grown here, but when I say I live in Florida, people are like, "Oh, well, they grow all kind of stuff in Florida." Yeah, southern Florida. This area again is primarily cotton and peanuts. There is some field corn that's grown here, primarily animal feed. There are some other things that are grown in this area. The kind of things that are grown here are, you can tell if you look at the traditional Southern diet in this area. And of course, you say Southern diet, it's not homogenous. In the South, just like the North, there are regional variations. And the history of food is very telling, especially in this area. The foods in this area were high in sugar because sugar cane used to grow here quite a bit, but it's no longer profitable. And so sugar nowadays isn't made from sugar cane. Most of it comes from sugar beets. It's grown out west. That's sort of are grown in foreign countries. And so those sugar cane crops that were common when my wife was growing up here, for example, no longer exist. They grow some, but not much. And they grow things like, as I mentioned, corn, but a corn that you would think about. It's not the corn that you would grow in the North. It's not sweet corn. A lot of it is either animal feed or it's a type of hard white corn that is grown for hominy. And that's a whole different process where corn that is dried and then it is treated with lye. Traditionally, nowadays, it's some other kind of more safe alkali, and it's turned into things like grits or hominy corn. And it's a process because that was a food staple that could be preserved without refrigeration, and they go bad. And again, in the South, it's very hot here. It's very humid. That meant that staple crops and crops that produce things like flour, cornmeal, those kind of things tended to have weevils and all that kind of stuff in. And so that was one of the reasons that you treated that kind of stuff with alkali or lye. Basically, it preserved it, but also killed all those critters off. And so again, things are not homogenous, but when you yell at people to, "Hey, you should just buy local," well, there's not a lot of local produce where I live, and that's true in other places in America, and it's also true seasonally. And
Yeah.
so, eh, when we were growing up, when there wasn't a lot of our food that was grown in foreign countries, then Americans were, or your parents were much more sensitive to seasonal things. You got strawberries only at a certain time of year. You got uh, gourd crops and pumpkin crops at a certain time of year. They were things that's why you saw pumpkin pie in the fall, not in the spring. That's why, again, things were very seasonal related. And over the last 30 years, as our food supply became international, Americans became very used to being able to get anything at any time. I lived in Alaska for a long, long time, and I lived in the Central Valley of Alaska, about 60 miles inland from where the ports were in places like Anchorage. And the local grocery store, Fred Meyer, had fresh produce all year round, strawberries and oranges and lettuce. And in a lot of cases, that produce, which was coming up from Seattle, was a hell of a lot better than the shit that I get in Publix here in the panhandle of Florida. And so, at almost any place in America nowadays, even in central Alaska, Americans are very used to being able to get anything that they want at any time that they want. And you're starting to see the impact of tariffs. And again, grown in America, like I started this conversation out by talking about grapes. Well, most of the grapes that you get in America that are grown in America, which will be in about 2 months, you'll start to see grapes that are American grapes that are $2.99 a pound or $1.99, depending on where you are in America and how far they had to travel to get to that store. Most of those are grown in the Central Valley in California. They're sure as hell not grown here. Okay.
Well,
It also, well, you also have differences. Not all crops are the same. The seedless grapes that you put in your mouth are not the grapes that you make wine out of, or other products. And so Americans have the luxury of being very ignorant of where their food comes from. And so when you have people that make decisions based on pseudoscience and threaded conspiracy theories, and I'm talking about the people that are now in charge of the Food and Drug Administration, the Health and Human Services Administration, the Federal Department of Agriculture, starting to make arbitrary decisions about whole foods and additives and processed food and those kind of things. And certainly those are things that obviously they're things that need to be looked into. Okay, I'm not sure why we have to have dyes in Fruit Loop when in Canada they don't. Okay, I mean those are maybe legitimate things to look into, but there's a scientific process for doing that and not making those decisions based on arbitrary bullshit conspiracy theories and politics. And very shortly, and you're seeing it right now, where you're seeing direct impacts to our food supply and the prices that you pay in the store. Things like beef. You're like, well, you should just buy American-made beef. Okay, let's do that. Where does that beef come from? Where is it grown? How do you feed it? And this is what's happening in the West right now. And that's what started this conversation, where you had farmers who said, buy American beef. Yeah, except the feed doesn't come from America. And the additives and the things that beef. And the farmers that voted for Trump based on the idea that he would limit foreign imports suddenly discovered that the things that they put into their cows to make beef come out the other end are now costing them more than they can afford, and that they'll be bankrupt in the next 60 days. And the only thing that might save them is if the President of the United States bails their ass out the same way he bailed out soybean farmers the last time around. And you tell me how that saves the American taxpayer any money whatsoever. Go ahead. These
well,
systems are incredibly complicated. They're incredibly self-intertwined. You cannot make these kind of changes arbitrarily and randomly and impulsively. I mean, Donald Trump sat up 3 days ago out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning with his phone in his hand and decided to put 50% tariffs on all products coming from Europe because he woke up mad. There's literally no rhyme or reason to slapping 50% tariffs on the European Union. Nothing. He just got up mad one day and decided tariffs with his little thumbs.
I tell you, Jim, it is crazy. But let me add one point to. I know it's back. You're going back. Remember, I said I haven't had to buy a salad makings from the store. And remember this, guys. What Jim says is there's different times and different places where stuff grows. You're not going to go out and put a raised bed garden in there and have salad all year. You're going to put. It just doesn't work that way. We are not gonna be. Nobody's gonna get to be an island in the middle of this shit. We're all gonna be affected, no matter what we do.
Bob, where do your seeds come from? Where does your potting soil come from? Where do the fertilizers that you use come from? Where does the water that you're watering this crops from? Where does the plastics to make your greenhouses? Where do the materials used to make your planting beds come from? All of these things, you're not growing stuff in isolation, but here's the most critical thing. Not everyone has the privilege and the luxury of being able to grow their own food. A hell of a lot of Americans live in places where they simply don't have the room to grow a victory garden. They don't have the time. I know people that work 2 jobs to put food on the table, to pay for their kids' dental care, their health care, because of this asshole country and its health care, who are paying off debts or they're working 16 hours a goddamn day. They're 20 years old. They've got 2 kids, or they're 25 years old. They got 2 kids. They got 2 car payments because you can't have a single income family. So both parents are working, and now they're paying for childcare. So now they got 2 cars and a rent, mortgage, that kind of stuff. And after working 16 hours a day, they don't have the luxury of coming home in the backyard in a planting bed, assuming they have a backyard. And there's a hell of a lot of Americans that being able to grow your own food is a goddamn luxury. It's a privilege. And not everybody has that. I mean, what do you people? My mom's 93 years old. You think she was a farmer her whole life? You think she's going to go out back and plant fucking food? I mean, come on. You know, and again, I'm not picking on you in particular. If you can do that sort of thing,
your point is good, Jim.
Yeah.
There are things that we can say and do that we think are like, well, you do what you can, even though you know it won't solve the whole thing. But
right.
Privilege,
sure.
Privilege.
And don't get me wrong. Yeah, and that's exactly the response. The reason I mention that is because those are the kind of asshole responses that you see online. People say, "Grow your own food." You know,
you can't grow it all.
And when people say, well, I can't afford this. I can't afford this rise in grocery prices. I'm already working 20 hours a day, and the immediate responses are, get a better job.
Hey,
grow your own food. Do your own, and you see these responses, and the problem is while some of that stuff is obviously driven via artificial means to make people angry, it also it is also legitimately how, and I'm surrounded by these kind of people, people who are working shitty minimum paying jobs because that's all their education and the local environment allow for, and who work 16, 18 hours a day just to pay the rent on some 30-year-old rundown house trailer, who are literally online telling other people to grow their own food. I'm like, dude, but again, this is a mentality that Americans have, and a large part of this is driven by a complete lack of empathy, the inability to put yourself in any shoes but your own. And you see this where, like I said, I said, like, I want to buy some grapes. Why don't you grow your own grapes? Or why don't you buy local grapes? These are Americans that really cannot fathom the difference in terrain and environment across 2,000 miles of North American continent, as if it's all the same. It's the same
I
where they live.
I
You know?
understand that one, Jim. And you know what?
Yeah.
I've kept you running 20 minutes over.
Yeah, I got to get rolling. I got to see if I can get out with the cameras before the storm hits and see if I can get ahead. That's a great one. A Mercedes here said raise chickens. I get that one every once in a while too. Look, I grew up on a goddamn farm, all right, shoveling horse shit and chickens and I joined the military and got the hell out of the Midwest because I didn't want to make cars and I don't want to milk cows. Okay, I mean, goddamn raising chickens. To hell with that bullshit.
But for the record, I also have a backyard chicken coop. And you know, one of the things I grow in my little gardens, I do not like zucchini, but my chickens love zucchini.
Right.
I grow zucchini for my chickens because it's cheaper than chicken food.
Oh, yeah. In fact, we lived in Alaska, and you wouldn't think about Alaska, but the Central Valley, the Matanuska, the Susitna Valley in Central Alaska are some of the best. It's all volcanic soil, and it goes down hundreds of feet, and so some of the largest pumpkins are in the world are grown there. But we had a garden out back, and by God, and you got, first of all, you got 22 hours of daylight and volcanic soil. You put seeds in the ground, and shit jumps out at you, which is good because the growing season's only about 3 months long. But by God, man, zucchini, by the end of the summer, I'm like, okay, I'm done with zucchini now because the one damn thing that would grow or anything else were zucchinis. I like zucchini, but by God, you can only have so.
Well, I would just give that small bit of advice that says if you're going to grow backyard chickens, grow your backyard zucchini because your chicken food is $20 a frickin' bag.
Right. Yeah.
But you know what? It's really
people. It's all over. It's in areas that people don't think about. And again, we keep trying to wrap up here, but what you brought up there is those of you who know me know I'm a wildlife. Make a lot of my or significant fraction of my living from bird photography, and I live on a number of acres of land here in the Florida Panhandle, and so a lot of that acreage is devoted to bird feeders. And the cost of bird food, which is seeds and grain and dried fruit, has tripled since Trump took office.
Yeah, amazing.
You know, I don't have to feed these birds. Don't get me wrong, it's part of, but it increased my cost for the images that I take. But it also means that old people like my father, who is an avid birder, didn't make any money doing it. He'd been active his whole life, and once he got to the point where his medical condition and his age no longer allowed him to move around, he became an avid birder. He was a bird watcher for Cornell University. He loved birds, and he had bird feeders out back that he would give him great joy to sit in his sunroom in the morning and watch those birds. And this is literally one of the few things that gave him joy as 79 years old and dying of COPD was to watch these birds. And there are thousands of Americans in that same boat today who can't afford bird food because the asshole that's running this country is like wakes up in the morning and decides to put tariffs on the one tiny thing that gives those people any joy. And the thing about it is, and like I said, I talked about privilege earlier in the podcast, it's these kind of things don't impact them. Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about bird food or bird feeders or national parks or the thing that give you that amount of joy in your life. And that's there's nothing that you can say that will change that, because the man is absolutely and utterly lacking in any kind of empathy or the ability to put himself in anyone's shoes but his own. And this is the hallmark of this political ideology. This, whatever the Republican Party has become, these MAGA assholes. The thing that ties them all together is this absolute nasty, foul, childish, vile lack of empathy, the ability to socialize, to put yourself in
Cruelty
somebody
is
else's shoes
like,
and see the world from a different viewpoint. And that's where we're at. So maybe next time, show up.
well, Jim, thank you very much. I'm so glad to have you here. You guys are.
I'm here. Thanks.
Oh hell, Jim, you know that you got people that they'll criticize you just to get a response. I think. Uh,
I sometimes think people just put up with me for the entertainment, but it's not something that particularly bothers me. So,
oh
all right,
hell.
man. All right, thanks for coming, guys. I appreciate it. I got to punch out now because, like I said, I got things to